longer. The next question for the Fever then becomes Sophie Cunningham, because we were wondering who they would actually protect in the expansion draft. Because Michaela Timpson wasn't selected, I'm going to guess she was protected. So they took the risk, and this is me speculating, of leaving Sophie Cunningham unprotected. But you never thought the Tempo or Fire would take her, because that would require giving her a supermax contract, and they can only get one unrestricted free agent. So I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same, because they have to decide what her future looks like with the Fever or not in free agency. So all of that is...
The locker room doors slammed shut, and what followed wasn't anger, it was silence, the kind of silence that tells you everything just fell apart. Stephanie White stared down at the final expansion draft list and realized this wasn't a setback, it was a collapse. Chloe BBY gone, Christy Wallace gone, piece by piece. The roster she spent all season building was ripped apart right in front of her. This wasn't just a draft night, it was a full-scale dismantling of the Indiana Fever, and as Caitlin Clark watched those names vanish from the board, one brutal truth set in: the teammates who helped build this team were now gone, and the future they planned together just cracked wide open.
All of that is things to get to. Let's start with what I mentioned, the goodbyes. Thank you, Christy Wallace, for the Caitlin Clark comment. If you recall, Wallace started for a bunch of Caitlin Clark's rookie year, and I was one of the people like, get her out of the starting lineup, So hopefully she can, continue to grow in her career and played overseas and all that, but obviously didn't contribute at all last year and had a rough year the year prior. Then there's Bibby, who showed some flashes with the Fever, again, because she could shoot the rock, and they don't have that prototypical stretch four, so that's a position they could still fill. I think when you get...
It all unraveled the moment Portland and Toronto made their final picks. Everyone expected minor moves, bench players, role pieces, but what happened instead? A direct hit to the heart of Indiana's offense. Losing Chloe BBY wasn't just a roster change, it was a system breaker. She was the one player who stretched the floor, opened lanes, and gave Caitlin Clark the breathing room she needs to dominate. A true stretch four like that is rare, and replacing it isn't easy. It's a long-term rebuild problem now. That piece is gone, and what's left behind is a massive hole with very few answers.
That's a terrible blow for the Fever going forward. Now they can focus on the free agency, like I mentioned. Kelsey Mitchell, priority number one, likely to be cored, but I could see the argument for just extending her long-term and figuring that out now, but they have the advantage of being able to core her on the Supermax. Aaliyah Boston under contract, but set for a raise. They can figure that out. Caitlin Clark's rookie scale goes up, but still under contract. Timpson, the only other player under contract, and I'm guessing she was protected, like I said, because it would be such a high upside, low risk move to take her in the expansion draft because she's on a rookie deal, and because she.
And hey, race, what makes it worse? Chloe BBY wasn't declining; she was rising. Before the injury, she was flashing real star potential, showing she could be a cornerstone of this team's future. But Indiana gambled; they bet that her late season setback would scare teams away. It didn't. Toronto saw exactly what Indiana tried to hide and took it. Now the Fever are paying the price, because you can't just replace chemistry like that in free agency. And now Stephanie White is staring at a roster that suddenly looks thin, fragile, and dangerously incomplete.
Another advantage they have. They have an advantage of Boston and Clark being under contract. They have the advantage of being able to core Kelsey Mitchell, and they have the advantage of Lexi Hull being a restricted free agent, so they can match any offer she receives. Then you start to work around the margins, what's left on the salary cap. I think, Cunningham fits the team. Her shooting, her toughness, her personality all fit the team. Obviously, her star power has gone up being next to Caitlin Clark and playing on Indiana. So all things being close to equal, I'm assuming she's inclined to come back. She's made it very clear, in fact, that is the case. But sometimes...
Then there's the situation with Christy Wallace, and this one's been building for a while. She opened the season as a key partner alongside Caitlin Clark, but behind the scenes things were already starting to crack. Tension, frustration, a role that kept shifting. By the time she was left unprotected, it didn't feel shocking, it felt inevitable. Still, losing a veteran who understands your system, that's not nothing, and for a team trying to build stability, it sends a troubling message, especially when your franchise player is left with one less trusted voice beside her.
Power has gone up being next to Caitlin Clark and playing on Indiana. So all things being close to equal, I'm assuming she's inclined to come back. She's made it very clear, in fact, that is the case. But sometimes these things can come down to a monetary situation. And basically What it will likely come down to is how much is left for the Fever salary cap, who else they see out on the market that could really help the team, and then how much of a raise they can give Sophie relative to what she could get offered by another team who could make a splash signing her. But all indications are, I think, that the Fever...
Some are calling this a clean house, but let's be honest, this looks more like a forced evacuation. Christy Wallace may not have filled the stat sheet, but she mattered in that locker room when things were falling apart early. Now she's gone, and with her a piece of whatever identity this team was trying to build. The message being sent is loud: if you don't fit the Caitlin Clark timeline, you're expendable. But hey, Race, the real question, are they tearing this thing down too fast? Because if you strip away too much support, even a superstar can't hold the roof up alone.
Are looking to run it back for the most part, with some small additions. So I would think that the changes would be more cosmetic than complete overhauls, but you never know. And until that is done, I think Sophie's probably the biggest looming question for the Fever. As far as the rosters for the Tempo and the Fire go, here you go. Here are the selections from the Tempo, who went a little bit more vet heavy. Lexi Held is an interesting pick, I think, that could really pan out for them. Marina Mabry, she is, for such a good player, she's obviously moved around a lot in the WNBA.
But the real story, the one shaking this franchise to its core, is Sophie Cunningham. Leaving her unprotected wasn't just risky, it may go down as the biggest mistake this front office has ever made. This was a high-stakes gamble, betting no team would touch her because of the money involved. They thought they were being strategic, protecting younger assets like Michaela Timpson, but when you leave a player like Sophie exposed, you're not being clever, you're inviting disaster, and now that decision is threatening to blow up the entire offseason before it even begins.
Cunningham, the biggest name overall selected, like I said, probably is Marina Mabry, going to the Tempo, fresh off the big unrivaled game in Philadelphia, and having played for the Sky and the Sun, and now headed over to that inaugural season in Toronto. But there are two brand new WNBA teams. And now we head off into free agency, where teams are going to have decisions to make. Now, I don't think there will be that much movement amongst the biggest stars, by the way. That's why, like, a Cunningham focus makes sense, because those are the players more likely to move, that level of player.
Sophie Cunningham isn't just another name on the roster. She's the attitude, the edge, the identity of this team, her toughness, her shooting, her presence. That's exactly what Caitlin Clark needs beside her on the floor. But now everything is uncertain. Reports suggest Sophie isn't locking in long term, and suddenly the Fever are scrambling because she holds the leverage. Playing next to Clark didn't just raise her profile, it exploded her value. And if she walks, this isn't just losing a player, it's losing the heart, the fire, and the backbone of the entire team.
Level of player. Versus, we've already seen Brianna Stewart say, I'm going back to the Liberty. We've already seen Sabrina Ionescu say, I'm going back to the Liberty. We've already seen Asia Wilson say, I'm going back to the Aces. So despite like 100 plus whatever free agents, I don't think the biggest names are going to move. I think the moves that get made that are going to determine the differences between these teams will be made on the margins.
Imagine being Stephanie White right now, trying to build a contender while everything starts slipping away. Sophie Cunningham is weighing big offers because money talks louder than loyalty in today's WNBA, and if she leaves, Indiana has no real way to stop it. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark is carrying the entire franchise under massive pressure, with a support system around her quietly collapsing as veterans move out and chemistry breaks apart. The financial reality is just as harsh. Kelsey Mitchell needs a major extension. Aaliyah Boston is next for a huge payday, and Clark's contract is rising fast, leaving almost nothing for key role players, which makes keeping depth like Cunningham nearly impossible. While around the league teams are getting stronger, Marina Mabry lands in Toronto, and Nika Mull goes to Portland, showing how quickly Indiana is falling behind. Behind the scenes, frustration is growing because Stephanie White was promised a contender, not a roster in survival mode, and if Indiana cannot hold on to its veterans or replace lost depth like Chloe BBY, the pressure on Clark becomes unsustainable, with no bench, no versatility, and no safety net, turning this from simple roster changes into a full-blown identity crisis that could waste one of the most important young stars the league has ever seen.